Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode from Hot Takes. And I've decided to call this one basically Cringe Mongers Go Wild because basically what this show is all about. And so, since I'm going at this alone right now, I'll just jump into this. Hopefully, other people will show up, but let me give me a second. Alright, so this first one is Neil Carnell, Glenn Greenwald, and on left wing promoting propaganda it once exposed. Basically, I think left wing media pushes neocon propaganda, which is kind of ironic because since that the left wing media has mostly been against neocons, but we're just jump into this one. Well, there is kind of an ironic truth that he is saying that they're pushing against Russia because of Trump. Now the only issue is that he thinks that they want a war with Russia. This is not true. In fact, prior to Donald Trump, they were actually extremely anti-intervention with Russia at all. And so saying that this is that the media has somehow become this pro-Russian outlet is a very inaccurate. I mean, saying that that media is just anti-Russian, wants war with Russia, and espousing neocon talking points on Russia, not exactly true. I mean, especially now that Trump's out of office, they're definitely going to take a less hard line on Russia. It was mostly because of Trump. Yeah, I wouldn't want that guy on Diesel, but that's just me. But I wouldn't want Glenn Greenwald to talk about foreign policy because he knows nothing about foreign policy. Surprise, surprise. Sup, Ken Zuck?
Sup? What are we watching? Oh, Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah.
And the Gray Zone?
Yes. A crossover no one asked for.
Oh, great. Just great. I just finished up paying taxes on my Neat books that I hoarded the past year and a half. And now I have to watch this. That's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, well, welcome to Masochism. It's Masochism Tuesday.
The video's kind of quiet.
Yeah, something's.
Is the video itself like fucked? What's going on with it?
Hold on. Sometimes I have to remove it and then re-add it. I don't know if that does anything. Like maybe. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's that man. I don't know. This happened last time. I don't know why I get to fix it. Yeah. Well, let me try this again. Can't be a stream with me if there's not a technical difficulty in the middle of it, so I guess. I think it.
We used to interview when I was there, like Steve.
Oh, it's good now.
Did that work? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear it now.
Passed away and wasn't on Democracy Now! For the last 3 years of his life, starting in April 2017. He died in September 2020. And what I said on the Jimmy Dore show was how sad I was about that, because this leading progressive show denied its audience of the leading critic of Russiagate and of the new Cold War that it was fueling. And that was part of a trend, I think, towards parroting the establishment narrative. So I'm wondering if you are now a victim of this too, if you have also been frozen out of Democracy Now!, whether you're...
Dude, is it really a massive push against... Maybe it's because he's been pro-Russia, not necessarily that he's against Russiagate. But, just remove that some context there, especially because if you were on a podcast called Democracy Now!, maybe you don't want Russia simp there.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Democracy Now! Like, isn't it a news website? Like a really, like, low effort, shit tier, like, barely reliable news website?
Yeah, it basically looks pretty shit. Yeah, it's like some just left-wing podcast, essentially. But we can continue.
You're a victim of this trend in progressive media to isolate voices that challenge the establishment narratives that they used to challenge too.
For sure. I think the only reason why they did put me on to talk about my skepticism of Russiagate was because they had me on constantly to talk about anything in the news. I would say over the last decade, from say like 2010 until maybe 2019, I was definitely one of the most frequent guests on Democracy Now!, maybe the most frequent. Maybe there's some people on more than me, but
he was the most frequent because like nobody else was willing to go on.
Yeah, kind of like why
he had 15 minutes of fame with like the Snowden bullshit, and nobody else knows who the fuck this guy is.
Like, yeah, it's kind of like why you're one of the most frequent guests on these streams.
Oh, did you just compare me to Glenn Greenwald? Come on, man, that's low.
Oh, yeah, that was a little too low
there. Come on, man.
They would have me on constantly. I'd be on there all the time. So they were kind of having me on to talk about my Russiagate skepticism, almost to spite themselves. Because I was one of the people to as a guest whenever it would come to national security or foreign policy or media debates. And I think the last time I've been on Democracy Now! Was mid-2019. I think I went on the last time to talk about the Brazil reporting that we did. It was like maybe a month after we broke the story. And I'm pretty sure I haven't been on since, including, as you said, even when I was indicted, when I got invited by every media outlet in the world.
I'm trying to figure out, was Greenwald the journalist that was critical of Bolsonaro, and Bolsonaro basically said he he doesn't like donuts, implying that he was a. That sounds like it was going Greenwald. I need to look this up because
I don't recall this story at all, so I need to look into this.
yeah, I'm just gonna look this up because I think. Yeah, basically, Jair Bolsonaro on his Twitter account basically called him like super. I can't actually say on stream, but rest assured it was kind of terrible, but also kind of funny at the same time because it was Glenn Greenwald. Wait, how's it going, says Bid?
Good to be back. Was just talking with a friend for like an hour.
Yeah, and now you get to watch Glenn Greenwald.
Yes, double the cringe.
Yeah, and Aaron Mate. So it's like there's two of them now.
Oh God, Aaron Mate. He apparently went to Duma, where the chemical attack was a few years ago, and was saying this was where a bunch of rebels massacred people and blamed it on the government. Just utterly insufferable. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I still don't get it. Why would the rebels have these where did they get these expensive chemical weapons? And why is it that they only use it on themselves when it proves that the West won't even do anything?
Yeah, like if we were to intervene on behalf of these things, we would have done so long beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, something Trump, something Israel, something Putin is savior of the West. Get wrecked, libtard.
Something China is doing nothing wrong to the Uyghurs.
To be interviewed. Even CNN invited me on. They eventually canceled but covered it. And then I think the book that I just published is my 6th book. The first book I published was in 2006. I've been on Democracy Now! To talk about all 5 of my books. The first week that it came out, they immediately asked me.
Oh, by the way, also apparently I think Democracy Now! Tried to claim that Jair Bolsonaro was somehow the biggest human rights abuser that was in power right now, which is
what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like I can point this. You don't even have to. You only have to cross the border to find worse human rights abuse. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get not liking his politics or something, or not liking him as a person, but that's just objectively not the case.
Yeah, like at least it's not like gassing his citizens or putting them in labor camps.
And he's not like dissolving Congress and ruling as a dictator or something.
It's Net7 too. How's it going, Net7?
Doing very well. What's the Gray Zone up to this time? What boot are they licking for Assad this time? His left boot or his right boot?
Well, right now it looks like they're not really licking boots as much as they're going on like psychotic ramblings. But anyway.
Yeah, I was told there would be a Lukashenko bootlicking at some point.
Yeah, like this one, I'm just finding some random ones. Like this one's pretty boring though. But and I'm not watching. I'm just gonna watch until basically no one wants to watch this one anymore, which is probably gonna be like 10 seconds.
In the case of this book, which is a book about my confrontations with the Bolsonaro government and the exposés I did on the corruption at the highest levels of a right-wing Brazilian government, my publisher, which is a small left-wing publisher, because I had a contract with a big publishing outlet, and they said, if you want to write a Brazil book, go ahead, and then you can do the book that you have with us after. So it's a small left-wing publisher, which is Haymarket, that is a great relationship with Democracy Now! They place almost everyone.
Yeah. I think we can pretty much know where this is going.
A small left-wing publisher. Yeah, I'm skeptical about their credentials. I'll
By
just
the
put
way,
it that
this
way.
guy basically pretty much made apologetics that got Lula free. So it's like this guy freed a corrupt socialist president.
Really? It was him?
Well, not him, but he helped basically free a corrupt.
Shit. If Brazil becomes the next Venezuela after the election, I'm gonna pin a lot of it on him.
Yeah, well, I think we can. I think we're going to say goodbye to Greenwald and Monte because that's not the main focus of this video. We have to find truly the most awful take that the gray zone ever gets.
Belarusian bootlicking, here we come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well, when it comes to the gray zone, they are uh, they spew out some of the worst propaganda out there. Like recently, I was viewing a tweet of where that gray zone guy was over in Syria and
oh yeah.
mouthpiece for the Assad regime and trying to suggest that, oh, it was the rebels who did all this. Oh, look at how horrible the rebels are. When Assad has killed over 200,000 people. 200,000. Now, now people try to say, oh, those were jihadis. No, they were not. They were people who were just saying, hey, we want a little less dictatorship and a little more democratic process. And Assad said, "Oh, really?" and sent in the army and literally just gunned down people at random.
Yeah, I mentioned that already. And Assad is responsible from what I've read, like somewhere on the odds of 80, 90% of civilian casualties in the war are his responsibility.
And also, get this. The main focus of this video, it's behind apparently it's only on the official website and it's behind a paywall. Like,
Ain't paying to see that shit, let me tell you.
like, come on, Grayzone, you have to make it all free because this is what the people want for us to react to it.
The people's media, right there. On
Yes.
second thought, it might be preferable to keep that out of the general site.
Yeah, probably is better.
Yeah, who's
Well, I
willing
mean-
to bet that that is the reason, like, Wikipedia was not willing to, like, let them use themselves as a source because they were, like, charging to fucking let people use their shit?
Anyway, so unfortunately,
Who would be
we
the-
don't.
Sorry,
Yes.
real quick. I'm sorry, Grayson, real quick. I mean, what dupe, for one, would want to actually pay to have to read their BS? And and two, the people that actually pay to review and read that stuff are such naive fools.
So let me see if I can find like some secondhand source. The only thing I found on Belarus was from 9 months ago, and it's an hour long. But you know what? I think we can handle it.
Let's nosedive in.
Yes, it's actually China and Belarus, so we get a 2-for-1 deal.
Double freaking whammy.
Anyway, just let me. And just let me share screen.
Yeah, to take your time, Grayson, while you get that up. Real quick before we do that, though, just want to mention that Ben Norton from the Gray Zone once tried to criticize the peaceful protesters or the people in Belarus, their movement, who are actually trying to say, hey, we want a more democratic process and not a Kremlin puppet. When he was called out on his crap, he tried to delete his tweet. But thankfully, people picked it up and rightly called him out for what he did, which was essentially trying to smear protesters who were killed in Belarus.
Also, like as Pessimistic Titan pointed out, Lukashenko is basically a man who hates his own country. Like, legitimately, the guy doesn't want anyone to speak Belarus, the native language. He wants them to speak Russian.
Yeah, he's promoting Russification and lionizing all sorts of old Soviet themes. And it's not only that, he's a terrorist. You read about this recent plane hijacking, right? There were like KGB agents, yeah, it's still called the KGB, threatening a bomb on the plane, and like they forced it to call in a jet that escorted it to Minsk. That's just pure and simple terrorist plane hijacking there.
Anyway, we can now get into the video, and before we get into this, I have to obviously have to join the fight. I know it's a little scummy to dislike on air, but you know, it's a gray zone.
They deserve it.
They're the bottom of the barrel. Also, we'll just skip this part. Right.
Great zone. Specifically, I've been looking a lot at the foreign policy work that you guys do. You're the assistant editor, and you describe yourself as hating a journalist that hates the media, which I kind of agree with that.
Well, he doesn't hate the media. He hates certain media. Because, like, hating the media is not a personality trait, first of all. Oh, and also I just realized I forgot to do I fucked up the audio again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can't hear it really well.
I always do this. And hold on. Yeah, you guys can, like, start a conversation because I gotta, like, restart this.
Wait, hating things is not a personality? Oh no.
Apparently not.
Yeah, apparently
like-
you can't base your whole worldview around just hating America.
Well, the thing is, like, when you say, like, oh, I hate the media, it's kind of like an amorphous, it's a term. Because what are you referring to when you say the media? Because a lot of people try to say, oh, well, the media misportrays this or the media is this. But what are you referring to specifically? Because there are people who say, oh, I hate the media because they spew right-wing talking points. But what they're really saying, they're talking about Fox. And then there are people who say, oh, I hate the media because they spew all these left-wing talking points. But those people are talking about MSNBC and CNN. So I think people need to be more specific on what they mean by, oh, the media this, because people on both sides tend to use that statement without really explaining beyond that point.
Yeah, okay. I think I did this correctly, and if I didn't, well, did I fix it? Oh, did you not hear that? Oh,
Play it again.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for covering these issues.
It's still
Joe-
kind of shitty.
oh, yeah, probably because I forgot to do it. I'm such a boomer. It's like I'm 18, and yet when I go online, I act like I'm 80.
You sound like you're 80. You're fucking young. What? Like, you're supposed to know how this shit works.
Well, look, here's the thing: these damn kids just keep going on my yard. It's like I don't want. It's these Zumos and their iPhones and their big chungus.
They're freaking iPhone Venezuela socialism.
Yes. You claim to hate capitalism, yet you exist.
As we'll talk about today.
Okay,
And
that should work.
Yeah, I hear it just fine.
Okay. So we conclude the Boomo cast of this stream. We get back to the real stuff.
you know, the root of my hatred of the media is that the majority of journalists won't touch these issues, and if they do, they'll only touch it with gloves that were approved by the CIA.
The CIA.
What the fuck does that even mean? Gloves that were approved by the CIA?
I think he's talking about his dick. I don't know.
Is that like a euphemism for like what the fuck?
Who's the Ben Norton translator? Because Like, I've been
He
watching
thinks
this guy.
the CIA personally approves every bit of news or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, but like that's such a weird way of putting it. It sounds borderline perverted. Like, look at his face too. Like, what the fuck?
Well, he always looks like that, to be fair.
Yeah,
Like, someone call the FBI. This man like needs to be investigated.
for multiple reasons. But yeah,
Or they should have to register as literally like a foreign asset of some kind.
Yeah, fifth column and sex offender. Like two birds, one stone.
yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we can get him deported, at best.
Wait. I thought he was born in America, so we can't get.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we have that rule about we can't deport people who are born here.
Well, can we at least revoke his citizenship and make him stateless? That would be something.
Yeah. It's like, why can't we be like Vietnam, where you can just kick people out of your country you don't like?
Well, I mean, where are they supposed to go though? At that point, like that's the question. Like that's the thing. Like, where do they go?
Well, Ben Norton.
He can go to
Ben
Putin's
Norton
Russia.
can-
He
well-
shills for them already.
Yeah, Ben Norton can move to Syria, where he, licks both of Assad's boots on a daily basis. He can go to, Russia, where he's fond of, singing Putin's praises.
Oh, like Peter
go to
Lavelle,
Korea,
right?
where or he'd even go to North Korea, where he tries to say all the problems in North Korea today are because of the West and not because of a maniac dictator family dynasty.
It's kind of funny it's scary when you sound like the propaganda pieces verbatim.
Exactly. So let's get right
She agrees.
Yeah,
Right into
as
that.
bad as Peter Lavelle is, at least he went to live in Russia. Like, at least he fucking stuck to his word. He stuck to his principles. Like,
He owns up to it.
yeah, he owns
Yeah,
up
lives
to it.
with the consequences of his beloved anti-imperialist states.
To be
Like,
fair, he probably dines
no-
with the elites, though, so he doesn't consider that consequences.
It's still better than like just sitting in the West, in my opinion.
Yeah, from your cushy first world home, talking about how it's not so bad people are getting bombed in Syria.
So we've had a lot of people on the show talk about China versus the Western media narrative. And in your own words, though, what's wrong with the U.S. narrative that China is authoritarian? Is there more to
Nothing. There's the
this
answer.
would be good.
truth.
I cannot wait to hear Ben Norton's like answer to this.
Okay, we're taking bets right now. What do you think his answer is going to be? Who wants to make a bet?
Confucian values. And
They're
that's just their
democratic
culture.
and they're a proletarian democracy.
No, he's going to do it's so cultural, bro.
There's democracy within the party itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
These are all things I've heard. And look, to be
This,
fair,
because
there are factions in the party, and that's what Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign is about.
It was really
It's about
just-
consolidating power.
Yeah, it was really about purging the Shanghai clique, which they were also pretty bad, but they were also incompetent. So I guess they're the better groups because
Yeah,
you want
like,
your
I don't
enemy to be
root for these kind of struggles because, like,
yeah, because incompetent communist states are better than competent communist states.
yeah, no, as
I would
one of
not
my
call Xi Jinping's faction competent.
Well, more competent compared to the Shanghai clique.
yeah, they're pretty competent at committing genocide, and clamping down on Hong Kong. Yeah, like I'd prefer a Chinese government that didn't do either of those things. Thanks.
No, by competent, like, he's completely going against what Deng Xiaoping said, hide your strength, bide your time. I mean, like, that's what the other factions would have done. Like, they're more dangerous in a way.
If you're looking like 2008, Beijing, China was all about no, we don't they would not criticize anything about almost any other country. Like they were at least trying to look the act of like this nice big power that doesn't actually want to harm anyone. And now they'll just freaking did a 180 under Xi Jinping. Now they're coming off as like this
Wolf warrior diplomacy is what it's called. In everyone's faces, you must not hurt the feelings of the Chinese people.
Yeah, people perceive this as powerful, but in my opinion, it's not, because you're not hiding your strength as you could have been.
like.
You're just throwing it all away.
Can we just talk about too how just terrible Wolf Warrior movies are? The Wolf Warrior movie.
Oh god, they're such shit. And it's a total ripoff of Rambo.
Yeah, it's Rambo, but in Rambo, the United States government wasn't exactly a good guy in the movie.
Yeah, and it's just like it's pure patriotic, over-the-top propaganda. I fight for China. And it's probably is it the highest grossing film of all time?
And, well, not in the war with China, yeah.
Because I just figured with China's population, it's easy to have the highest grossing film if it's super popular there.
Well, I could look this up. Let's see, highest grossing films in China. I'm just going to use Wikipedia. Yeah, Wolf Warrior 2 was the highest grossing movie after a movie called He-Man. Second place is He-Man, though that's also still in cinema, so I guess it could technically beat them.
Oh man, what a sorry excuse of a franchise.
Yeah, like I'm actually kind of hoping that it's called Hi Mom. That's literally what it's called. I'm an idiot, but I don't know what this movie is about, but I just hope it beats Wolf Warrior 2 just because it's not it probably doesn't seem like as propaganda as Wolf Warrior 2.
We can hope. We can hope.
Wolf Warrior 2, even Joseph Goebbels looks at that film and is like, little too on the nose.
Yeah, and it's like not effective propaganda for that reason. Like the best propaganda has you cheering along with it, as opposed to just laughing at how ridiculously over the top it is.
Oh, like that Russian military ad that was circulating around the past week.
And was being contrasted with the US military ad.
Yeah, Russian propaganda is actually effective, and that's what makes it more dangerous. Whereas Chinese propaganda, everyone looks at it and it's just like, look at this dumb shit.
Like, how many times have I seen have I cringed at Chinese propaganda? Like they don't know how to communicate with people at all.
And it's like the worst is these videos of Uyghurs smiling and dancing and elaborately choreographed rituals. It's like, if there's suspicion that you're mistreating this group of people, that's probably not the way to dispel the rumors. That just makes you look more suspicious.
No, it's also kind of like when they tried to do a rap video to the 2 sessions.
They made an entire YouTube ad called "Is Huawei a State-Owned Company?" And it's a whole 1-minute ad on YouTube that interrupts your video, explaining how Huawei's not state-owned.
And I've never clicked the skip button faster in my life.
How many kids who probably never fucking cared or even heard of the fucking situation are just seeing this just the fuck is this? What? Have they never heard of the fucking Streisand effect? Why would you make this ad?
Also,
fuck?
We better continue with this because we are not going to make any progress at this rate. We're going to be here by 2033.
Everybody's immediate reaction is China's authoritarian. We have to help the Chinese. We have to help Hong Kong. We have to bring democracy. It's this idea that many people on the left also tend to support.
Well, yeah. Like, if you're not crazy, you would support it.
Yeah, no, it's just basic human decency.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to interrogate what that question even means, right? A lot of debates are, frankly, what they boil down to is a discussion of the terms, a debate of what the definitions are of the terms.
Oh, what does it even mean to be authoritarian, huh?
Wait a second. That sounds like someone else we know.
This is
I
very
wonder whom.
sus.
Your definition mongering. Like,
Yeah, let's continue.
So what does it mean to be authoritarian? That buzzword is thrown around all the time.
Oh, it's a
And
buzzword
it's usually
now.
yeah, no. I think authoritarian. It's not. You can't really call it buzzword because you know how many authoritarian countries still exist in this world.
Most of them?
Yeah, like most of Africa, basically.
It's
Middle
not just
East.
authoritarian.
And a lot of a great deal of countries have become more authoritarian just in the last decade.
It's not just authoritarian, it's totalitarian. And there's there's way fewer of those, but China's one of them.
It's at least becoming more that way. Like there was an app recently that your social credit score depends on you using this app regularly to learn Xi Jinping thought. That's straight up totalitarian shit there.
Yeah, like at least you could say in like early 2000, like 90s China, it was more of an authoritarian state. But
no, Xi Jinping is what turned a lot of that around.
Yeah, like again, you could argue that's why they were better in a way, but that's also kind of why they're worse too. But because if they're better, they can get like with this is semantics. We can move on.
Essentially used to mean that if you don't have a leader change power every 4 to 8 years with some kind of ceremonial shift, even if the policies all stay the same, even if the leader and the government actually don't represent the people, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a ceremonial shift in the de facto head of state. Or
yeah, I don't want to really call that a ceremonial shift.
Yeah, who seriously could argue that Trump and Biden were basically the same?
Yeah, there's no radical shift across the entire political compass like every 4 years. So basically like there's never any change in politics according to Ben Norton.
Again, it's like most of them are going to be near the center because that's where most people in most normal countries are.
Well, the center is like literally Hitler, according to Ben Norton.
Yeah.
Or at least the symbolic head of state every periodic time. So according to that definition, the U.S. is a democracy. It's not authoritarian. But everyone around the world can see right now that the U.S. police state is brutalizing protesters.
What? You're talking about like the George Floyd protesters?
Yep, that's what he's talking about.
Like those, I think those are like responses to like riots. I don't know. And also, again, if you get into like the numbers of like police killings and stuff like that, there was definitely a lot of misinterpretation of the data. Like, how many times have you heard thousands of black people are being murdered in the U.S. when the number was more like 300?
And it's like we have what he doesn't get is we have the freedom to call that shit out. In China, in Russia, when the police do something like that, people are pretty powerless to do anything about it. There's no defund/abolish the police movements there.
That in U.S. elections, if there is a popular candidate, someone like Bernie Sanders, it's very clearly stolen from them.
The voters rigged the election.
#stop the steal.
Yeah, it's rigged by low information voters, as they would say.
Yeah. Yeah, low information voters. That's a little bit of a what you call a I forget the word. Basically, some people might consider that something else. A certain demographic didn't vote for Sanders, so they must be low information. And that definitely doesn't have any racial motivation behind what I just said.
Everyone just watched them steal the election in broad daylight.
First of all, Bernie Sanders never actually was in a national election. It was a primary, a party primary. And technically, political parties aren't even obligated to do primaries if they don't want to.
Yeah, and again, blatantly stolen. This reminds me a little bit of Trump's rhetoric towards after the election, and at
Yeah.
least that was a nationwide
He
election.
should also consider that, like, of all the popular online support that can be seen for, like, Bernie Sanders among young people, like, you read any, like, statistic or study, like, how many young people, like millennials, go out and vote? Like, barely any.
Yeah, I
Like,
haven't
seriously,
voted.
they don't fucking vote. It's actually, like, a fucking problem.
Yeah, I haven't voted in an election at all yet. Probably because I wasn't old enough to vote in an election yet, but
No, but seriously, they're just fucking lazy. Like, they could have had the election if they wanted. They're just fucking lazy. It's totally on them.
Yeah, I want to real quickly say something about this voting thing because I used to work sometimes the elections over in Maricopa County, and it just shocked me, because I was over at the uh, the office over in Phoenix when this the whole voting thing was going on, and yeah, obviously seeing people's like votes and stuff like that, seeing that with people who would vote for President Trump. But on the local level, they would vote for Democrats at the city council level. Now, city council elections, remember, are nonpartisan, so you don't see the person's political affiliation on those sort of ballots. You just see the name, and you're expected to. The reason they're supposedly nonpartisan, even though at the end of the day all elections are partisan, is because it's kind of considered, well, with these local stuff like school board and everything, that it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. But the thing is, it just amazed me how dumb some of the voters were, because they'd vote for partisan elections, either Republican or they'd vote Democrat, but then the nonpartisan elections they'd either leave a blank or they'd vote for people who were the opposite party. And I just kind of scratched my head. I'm just like, do these people actually know who they're really voting for at these local nonpartisan elections? And I realized that no, they don't. They're just filling in a name because they think that they're choosing people based off of either how the name sounds, or just and that's, or just because they think, because of the way the name sounds, or because of I'm just going to vote because it sounds good, or because I think this person is on my side. But it kind of just showed me how ignorant some of the voters are when it comes to these nonpartisan elections.
No, and like the local parties provide a list of candidates they recommend for that very reason.
okay. Yep, we're going to get back to this and then probably finish this in like 3 years. See you then.
For the primary election.
Yeah.
And we're left with a choice between two candidates who are basically identical, especially in this election. I mean, it's pretty insane. And
What? Similar?
It's not like in South America where it's a choice between, like, totalitarian fascism and totalitarian, like, communism, so it's not good enough
Like the
for Ben
current
Norton.
Peruvian election.
Yeah, it's not like that, so it's not good enough for Ben Norton.
Honestly, I don't know who would be worse in that election. Like, maybe you could say that the Fujimoji would be a little easier to control because she'd have to make compromises with the more moderate. But
Yeah, no, and like the other guy, one of his associates whom he's distanced himself from, said that we're going to start a revolutionary process when elected, and that scares the shit out of me. So I probably don't want them to get elected.
Yeah. Not enviable choices.
They're both funded by Wall Street. They're both funded by large corporations. One of them is a billionaire. The other one told billionaires that nothing will fundamentally change. So what's incredible is hearing people complain about how China is authoritarian while saying it. And this,
Wall Street does fund people. That's how political campaigning works.
Wait, did he just say, okay, so America is centrist and that's why China's not authoritarian? Like, did he just
Also-
make that jump? Did he just make that leap? Like,
Also, it's like, notice he never actually named any policy positions where Trump and Biden are different. Because they're pretty different.
Yeah, it's like just as these last few months have shown.
same breath, we have to vote for Joe Biden, giving ammunition to those people who think that the U.S. is somehow a democracy. I would argue that in many ways, we should think of democracy as not just.
Well, we could just go to the democracy index, where they literally subjectively measure how democratic a country is.
No, but that's you don't know. That's a creation of the CIA to demonize China or something.
Yeah.
A ceremonial shift in power, but does the government actually represent the people? Does the government actually provide services to the people?
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
About $1 trillion on Social Security.
And democracy is apparently when you have social services.
Yeah. Sorry, Liechtenstein, you're not a democracy.
Oh, gosh.
Who are the people who are actually governing the society? Is it the politicians who are ostensibly elected to represent people, or is it capital? Is it billionaire oligarchs? Is it the military-industrial complex?
Yeah, if the military-industrial complex controls Biden, then why is he not doing any real action? Like,
Because fuck you.
Yeah, why is he pulling troops out of Afghanistan? Wouldn't the military-industrial complex object to that?
yeah, it's almost as if the military-industrial complex isn't actually a real thing. Or is it actually that powerful?
Yeah,
Because-
it's like a vague and difficult to define, and yeah, it's not some shadow government or something.
Especially since, like, Lockheed, a lot of what they're doing is, like, they're doing a lot of work in solar power now. You know, a lot of these companies have
It's
switched
just
to-
not all about. It's not just all about weapons. They focus on other things.
Some of these companies only do weapons building on the side. Like a lot of the designers of military trucks. That's more of a side thing.
Is it the unelected shadow intelligence agencies, these spy groups that, just basically
Is this guy rolling his eyes? I swear I saw him roll his eyes.
commit organized crime, but it's under the aegis of the state, so it's okay. And then if you look at the context of the U.S., it's a deeply authoritarian society. So it's so
Deeply authoritarian?
But that's a
Like-
buzzword.
I don't think you can. Usually, if your society is deeply authoritarian, then maybe if you can criticize it, maybe it's not deeply authoritarian. Like,
Yes, here he is right now saying how authoritarian the U.S. is. Go to China. Say Xi Jinping can suck my ass and see how long it lasts. See how long before you get arrested. Just say that, not even make any
Yeah, like
substantive
this.
criticism.
just
That
show
is
them this meme.
awesome. Yeah.
so wild to me when people complain about China. Look, of course, people have every right to criticize their own government. So, of course, Chinese people have many criticisms of their own government. But the irony is that if you look at polling consistently, and this is independent polling by Western firms, not by firms that are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, they show that consistently the government in China is quite popular with support from around 3/4 of the population.
Yeah, I'm gonna doubt you on that one, Chief. Like, there's a lot of inherent restrictions to polling in China on questions like that to begin with. Like, even if people are against the government, they might not say it to anybody because, you know, they don't know who's going to hear it. They don't know if this is some sort of government plan to track them. So yeah,
they have historically done this. There was a whole campaign with Mao where he let everyone freely. He said, "All right, you all can now freely criticize," and that was actually just basically a lie to find out who was actually a traitor.
Yeah, they use that to root out all actual opponents. So when a poll of any kind conducted by anyone comes to the surface, a lot of people aren't necessarily going to be honest with it.
So I'm actually going to say this. Even if it's just a quarter of the people who admittably, given all the things that the Chinese government can do to you if they find out, and still a quarter of the people still say they hate the government, the number's a lot higher.
Yeah, no, it's definitely much higher than that.
Yeah, it's like a quarter. It's like even when a quarter of the people are still willingly going to speak out against the government that's that totalitarian, then then they're not that popular.
Yeah, they're keeping a lot under wraps.
Has anyone looked at polling of popularity of the U.S. government? I mean, the last time I checked, Congress has some close to a single-digit approval rating.
Yeah.
But they won't mention that
because we're allowed to criticize and disapprove of it publicly.
Also, technically, some polls show that Biden has like this high approval rating, which, to be fair, probably isn't that true. Like, I don't think he has a 65% approval rating, guys, but
yeah, he is pretty popular, and this was last year, of course, when Trump was president.
Even then, to be fair, pretty sure if Trump had the power Xi Jinping does, it'd still be way less than a quarter of the people saying
There's no trust in the media. There's certainly no trust in the White House, and that's true for Obama and for Trump. The only institution in the U.S. that's trusted is the military.
Well, and the Supreme Court, and the police.
Yeah, them too.
It's like, funny how they never mention the Supreme Court has a rating.
Because
it's
I
funny
guess
how it's just funny how like the one branch of government that isn't elected has the highest approval rating.
Yeah, both them and other unelected branches, like, you know, the military.
Yeah.
Which says a lot about how authoritarian the society is. So,
what?
It's authoritarian when you disapprove of the government?
Yeah, it's like what? It's like, oh, because they have high trust in the military. It's like, yeah?
Yeah, what the heck?
Like, I'm pretty sure most nations have high trust in their military. Because if they don't, they're either A, a nation like Costa Rica where they don't have a military, or B, in a lot more serious trouble.
Yeah, it's one of those countries like, you know, Myanmar that's just underwent a coup earlier this year.
That was inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
We just have to have a more expanded understanding of what it means.
By the way, speaking of Myanmar, this guy defended them. The military.
I'm shocked but not surprised.
I wasn't even shocked, to be honest. Like, yep, Makes sense. It's been open.
I'm a bit surprised. I mean, they have a surprisingly cozy relationship with Israel.
Oh yeah, they're one of the few countries to recognize only Israel and no Palestinian sovereignty whatsoever.
Means to have what it means to be authoritarian, because if you have an election every 4 years that's rigged, that's stolen, where millions of votes are thrown out, by the way, but if you still have the ceremony of an election every 4 years, that doesn't make you a democracy.
Yeah, and we can tell you
100%.
about elections on this couch over here. That's our area of expertise, and
Yeah.
They're not. Well, I don't think they get paid for it. Hopefully, or else I think that's considered theft.
yeah, I don't think we're anything but plutocrats running this country. But let's dive a little bit deeper into this, because a lot of people say it's the humanitarian situation, in particular the Uyghurs. And when you argue about China's independence against these,
Oh God, are they going to go for it?
Here comes the denial.
Yep. Get ready, boys, because we're going into shit even deeper than what we've ever seen on this channel before.
NGOs like the NED, a lot of people will point to those Uyghurs being rehabilitated or reprogrammed or whatnot. And the Western media seems to have this kind of like facade that if you're a Muslim in China, you're going to be jailed of sorts, and not really understand the history of the Uyghurs. Can you dive a little bit more into that, about as far as, the connections with these concentration camps and what they really are, if they are concentration camps?
I think I know he's going to probably do
If
the
they
math.
are concentration camps.
Like, what do you call a camp what do you call somewhere where you round up people based on their religion and force them to disavow it? It's like,
A vocational training center, of course.
yeah, totally not the same thing.
And what the Uyghurs are all about, and in general what it is, because when I look at a lot of stuff online, when I look at Carl Zah, I see Muslims all over China, in East China, West China, all over the place. So can you dive a little bit into that particular narrative? Because,
well, yeah, you might see some Muslims in other parts of China. That's not really the considered where most of the Muslims are. And why has the Uyghur demographic gone down so much in recent years? It's like, it's like, gee, where are the Uyghurs?
Yeah, when somebody asks where all the ethnic minorities went.
because the neo-progressives won't let this go.
Absolutely.
Neo-progressives?
What does he think they're like progressives who the original progressives, like?
I feel like neo is a buzzword. Like, people just throw that onto any word. Like, they
so you're just a neo-fat fuck then, Kanzik? Neo-Kanzik.
Neo is a buzz prefix.
Yeah, I'm a neo-Hungarian myself. New Hungary, all the way.
Well, I'm a
probably
Hungarian. Take that.
the most important piece of ammunition that the U.S. has so far in the new Cold War, and we should. Every time we're talking about China, we have to frame it in the context of a new Cold War.
Well, that's sort of what's happening. You basically already have nations that are forming alliances with China against China. Like, you put them, the lines have been drawn in, like, you have like America, Japan, Australia, India, Vietnam, the Philippines, Taiwan, and then you have like China, Laos, Burma, Pakistan, I guess Kazakhstan. So it's like
all the stands are like I don't know, like, what even are they? They're
all like stands for China, except for Afghanistan, because that's practically.
I still think that's a contested area for influence, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
That's exactly what's happening right now, and it's a bipartisan war, like basically every war in the U.S. except the class war, which has no support from the political class.
What?
The class war.
Is this? I've heard that before. Class war. We all know what. Also, what do you mean wars are bipartisan? It's like, you know how many? You know, it's like both Republicans and Democratic senators overwhelmingly were against U.S. intervention in Yemen. Like,
Yeah, no, it's like especially in the age of Trump, Republicans are becoming more anti-war.
yeah, it's like Ted Cruz literally is out there supporting the withdrawal of Afghanistan. It's like, no, it's not that bipartisan to support war. Because America was under, if America had like a warmongering neocon, we'd know it because it'd probably be world peace at this point.
No, it's just a meme they repeat, as always.
Yeah.
But if you look at the speech Mike Pompeo gave a few weeks ago, Mike Pompeo went to it's the Nixon Center, is what it's
Fullerton.
called, and
Yeah.
it's where, and this is a very symbolic speech because it was Richard Nixon who famously had the opening with China. There was a split, the Sino-Soviet split. It's a long history we don't have time to get into, but the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China.
So wait, who does he support in that? We got
Sino? Like, is that how you pronounce it? Like, I could be wrong, but I don't
it's
think
like
that's how you pronounce it.
I think you can pronounce it either way. It's like Sino. I've seen it pronounced both ways.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Sino.
I've
never heard anyone pronounce it Sino, like,
honestly,
ever.
It's pretty semantic, so.
Had a falling out, and there was a period of political transition. You know, China has changed a lot in the past 60 years, a lot, and we can talk about that. But there was actually a period, this is ironic, where in the 70s and the 80s, it was actually, there was an alliance between the PRC, China, and the U.S. against the Soviet Union.
Well, it wasn't really an alliance. It was more because it was never in the official treaty sign. It was more of a. It would be kind of like U.S. and Vietnam today. Would be a good comparison. Where it's like we're not officially allies with Vietnam, though we also have. We're allies in name only, in everything but name, but.
And this is a period, especially with the rise of Deng Xiaoping, and there's a lot of political transitions. This is after Mao Zedong dies in 1976. It's the end of the Cultural Revolution. And so there's a period there where China and the U.S. team up against the Soviet Union. And that is the beginning of this relationship. And now we're seeing the effective end of that partnership, and we're seeing a process of what people call decoupling. And
yeah, but whose fault is it that relationship broke down? I mean, the relations, even as late as like 2014, was still decent. It wasn't until Xi Jinping that relations really took a beating. Like,
yeah, and things only started getting really bad in 2019 with Hong Kong and the like. I think if we're going to give a definitive year for the second Cold War, that might be it.
Yeah, because like even if you go back to like 2012, I mean, it's like China, and you wouldn't think China would be this big threat.
Yeah, we were getting on just fine at that time.
And you actually will even hear some right-wingers in the Trump administration who will use the term economic decoupling. What they mean is they mean delinking the Chinese economy from the U.S. economy.
Well, there's multiple reasons for that. In fact, some people advocate for decoupling on even like doing it because they hate China. They want to do it because they think the whole job stealing thing.
Because you can't really hurt the Chinese economy with sanctions without hurting the US economy because they're so integrated. So we're going through this process of decoupling. And this is something that Steve Bannon was pushing really early on in the Trump administration. And it's something that you know, it's been the long-term trajectory, although it's easier said than done. And anyway, the point is that Mike Pompeo gave this speech, and he gave it in the Nixon Center because in his speech, he framed it saying that he views the Pompeo State Department, which is basically the CIA. We can never forget that Pompeo comes from the CIA. He's also...
Yeah, you can never forget anyone from the CIA. You know what, like 90% of what a CIA agent does? They sit in front of a laptop and types things in.
Yep. Well, and also, you know, live in Ben's head rent free. There's that.
But that laptop was prescribed by the CIA.
Yeah.
Didn't think of that,
Totally.
did you?
No. I don't know where the
a
laptop
Koch
came
brothers asset. I mean, he's a great example of the best democracy money can buy, right? The Koch brothers totally created him as a political figure. He came out of the military. There was actually a really interesting article in The Nation looking at the West Point Mafia that he was part of, that looks at this kind of mafia, this elite grouping within the U.S. military, specifically within the elite military academies like West Point that Pompeo comes out of. And there's a really interesting article you should check out in The Nation detailing more of that. But anyway,
You shouldn't check it out. If he's recommending an article, don't check it out.
anyway, the point is that Pompeo comes out of the military. He enters right-wing Republican circles. The Koch brothers cultivate him. He becomes head of the CIA. He takes over the State Department. And the State Department at this point is a wing of the CIA. I mean, they've always...
This is a guy. This is how you know Ben Knowlton failed civics class.
Yeah, what does he think the CIA does anyway?
Yeah, it's amazing what the CIA can do with just $70 billion a year. Like,
Apparently,
honestly,
they can create entire uprisings in Hong Kong and Belarus.
they can do all that while running the State Department, and also hiring tens of thousands of agents you would need for all this, hiring the mercenaries. My God, this was the most effective thing I've ever seen. Maybe they should run the healthcare. Those premiums are going to be very low.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I wish they were that effective. Who knows? Maybe Ben is secretly a CIA agent spreading rumors that they're more effective than they actually are.
Yeah, make people feel the CIA.
always had a very close relationship, but the State Department is pushing regime change around the world, all of these things. Anyway, so this is a lot of context, but the point I'm saying is that...
Like, where are we pushing regime change? It's like, we say we want regime change in some places, but where do we actually push significant influence where it could actually do anything?
Yeah, that's what he always fails to explain.
That we have to understand all of this context in order to understand why the U.S. is so fixated on China, why we keep hearing about the Uyghur situation and all of this propaganda. So Pompeo said that his view is that it was a mistake for Nixon to make this alliance with China, and that now the goal of the U.S. is basically to overthrow the Chinese government.
Based. I wish that was true.
Yeah, based in puggers and red pilled and Giga Chad.
Yeah, like, you know how cool it would be if, like, Taiwan just one day just took over the PRC with very, like, my God.
100%.
And I mean, just think about all the global prosperity that would happen. Russia would soon collapse because they couldn't handle then that means no Iran, no Syria, no Venezuela. It would be a glorious time of humanity.
For all except Ben.
Yeah.
He didn't say that explicitly, but he very heavily implied it, saying that there needs to be an alliance of Western so-called democracies, which is probably going to include dictatorships, because Saudi Arabia certainly isn't a democracy.
Jean Kirkpatrick doctrine, though. Like, you work with dictatorships who can serve your interests.
And you never hear them complain about authoritarianism in the most authoritarian country on earth, probably Saudi Arabia.
Nope, that's North Korea.
Yeah, either North Korea or Turkmenistan, actually, when you look at the democracy index.
Yeah, I think it's like North Korea, from what I've seen. So, and again, ironically enough, despite the fact that it's an absolute monarchy and it even denies being a democracy, it's still set to overtake Iran in the democracy index.
Oh man.
Yeah, you know you're not a democracy if you're being beaten by an absolute monarchy.
It's like that meme. Are you a democracy? China, North Korea. Yes. Oman. No.
But I think Oman actually does have a somewhat elected parliament that does very little, but it does exist.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic that it actually has this more. It's like, no, I am not a democracy. But what about your democratic systems? Screw them. I am not a democracy. The only democratic nation that would deny being a democracy. Never change, Oman. Never change.
Never change.
But anyway, the point is that he said that we're going to make this alliance now, and there's going to be a conflict with China to change the government in China.
Well, I don't think he said conflict in China. Like, no one I don't think anyone's in a serious position would advocate for a conflict in China.
They have fucking nukes, man. That would be suicidal for all of us.
Yeah, and
like China isn't Iraq.
Yeah, it's like there's 1 billion people there. Like they're not going to take China out through war. Because that would not be an efficient strategy. What they're probably doing is they're probably putting the sort of war toys near China as a deterrence and not a planned invasion.
And we've seen many other figures. There was a New York Times op-ed by Niall Ferguson, who is a Harvard right-wing historian, a leading defender of the British Empire. He wrote an article last year, and he said very explicitly, there's a new Cold War with China, and it's good. So that's the...
Well, it's not good that there's a new Cold War, but it is good that we're doing something against China. Like, I mean, maybe pick your words better, but that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. 100% support it. Alliance of Democracies.
Yeah.
The context of what's happening. And one of the most powerful weapons of propaganda that the U.S. has in the new Cold War is this idea that they're trying to cultivate that somehow China is like Nazi Germany.
I mean, if any country is like Nazi Germany, I mean, China's up there. I mean, maybe it's not Syria or Iran or North Korea, but it's up there. Little the similarities.
With concentration camps and everything.
It's like, again, with the concentration camp thing, it's like, it's like, oh, but we only hear from dissidents. Yeah, we only heard from German concentration camps from dissidents. So it's like,
yeah,
Right.
Which is really wild, because if you looked objectively at any country in the world right now, what would be the country that's most like Nazi Germany? The U.S.
Yeah.
what?
Look at his face. He's fucking insane.
Look at him, like his eyes. Like he's turned. After he's made that comment, his eyes are turned away from the camera. Okay, he knows he's obviously lying, and either that or he's looking at the CCP agents who are saying That's right. Keep the smile up. No sudden movements. Just play along. You know-
Yeah, like
Yes,
it's
ignore the gun barrel pointed at you.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I'd rather take the bullet. Probably be less painful than having to say that.
it's
Yeah,
actually very
I-
unsettling. This guy's facial expression, especially
Yeah.
this freeze frame.
we need to meme that. Someone needs to meme that. If there's anyone right now watching who can meme that, like just get that as a meme. Seriously.
Okay, hold on. Let me just find the video and I'll get it.
United States. It's not China.
So do we even need to address why that's BS? Well, it's like I think we all know why.
I mean, it's like it's so obvious. Everyone knows that's so obviously false what he just said. Who actually operates modern day concentration camps? The CCP in North Korea. Who puts an ethnic group and religious group within those concentration camps? The CCP. And even in North Korea too, where they throw Christians into certain camps, the worst of the camps. And he then also not just that, but who also persecutes another religious group within mainland China, the Falun Gong, the CCP, who conducts experiments on people, even live people, just like the Nazis did. The CCP, we've heard plenty of reports of the CCP individuals within the military actually conducting live organ harvesting. I want to repeat that for the audience. Live organ harvesting on Falun Gong practitioners. I mean, that should horrify you. Any sane person would be horrified, and we should be horrified that there are actually people who are willing to conduct these sort of disgusting, grotesque things on other human beings. This is what the CCP does. If there's any organization or government on earth that is like Nazi Germany, it is the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, that is definitely the case.
But no, if you don't support the new Cold War against China, you're a Nazi.
Oh, by the way, he probably unironically believes this.
Yeah, doesn't that include some maps the US briefly used for like 3 months in 2005?
Yeah. Of course, I unironically believe this is what it should be. Now this is peak beauty right here.
Yeah, but look at how Chad just resists. That's how Chad they are.
Yeah, Chad, they're too Chad for military bases. Who needs a military? We just go into the battlefield for like big dongs, intimidate the enemy. We only need big dongs and Toyotas.
You support concentration camps. That's the tactic that's been created here, and it's very effective because
it's true. Who would have thought truth would be effective?
Well, of course, it is the truth. They want to say like all that stuff. Oh my gosh, the U.S. has bases all around the world. We're the problem, or NATO has bases all around the world. You put those bases to promote the peace, to protect against the bullies, which is the Kremlin, the Chinese Communist Party, the Kim dynasty, the Ayatollahs in Tehran. So, the reason that they live in such privilege and safety is because of the United States and NATO's global reach and power. So they shouldn't be complaining about that and trying to suggest that there's some nefarious scheme going on. If we had bases in Europe after World War One, perhaps maybe World War II wouldn't have happened in Europe, or maybe if we'd had bases, maybe if we'd had bases there, to promote the peace, maybe Nazi Germany wouldn't have come about. So this whole nonsense they're talking about is just, again, fifth column hackery. But I'll stop there.
can get all of these liberals, you can tug at their heartstrings and say, look, we have to make common cause with the Trump administration. Even though we don't like them, even though we don't like Pompeo, we have to make an alliance with them, or like the alliance between AOC and Ted Cruz against the evil Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
Based.
Hey. I mean, it's like, yeah, when you're walking against nations, you are going to walk with some unsavory people sometime. Like, yeah.
Including those you disagree with. I'm glad there's something that can bring AOC and Ted Cruz together.
Yeah, like, when walking against China, you may have to bring in Vietnam. You may have to bring in the nations like the Thai military junta. Like, those are not the best nations. Those are the nations you're going to get when you're opposing China. And you'd be an idiot to reject them.
Yeah.
Because they're Nazis.
Yeah.
So that's the larger context. And we can talk more about Xinjiang and the Uyghurs and all of that. But we really have to keep in mind that we're in a new Cold War. And I really think that history books, if the planet survives, I mean, if climate change or the real possibility of a nuclear conflict, if a new world war, if that doesn't destroy civilization, then I think in 50, 100 years, historians are going to look back at this moment and be like, this is the beginning of the new Cold War between the US and not just China, but also Russia.
Well, technically the Russian one never really ended, just went on hiatus for like a few years in the 90s.
Well, yeah, there were honest efforts at rebuilding, but hampered by distrust, and they didn't really view their neighbors as sovereign. So when they joined NATO, Russia saw it as an aggression.
And a lot of Western media also, just keeping along with the Uyghurs, it says that if you're Muslim in China, you're treated entirely different. Have you seen evidence of that?
Yeah.
Well, there are Muslims all across China, and this is what's also so interesting, is that the Uyghurs are one particular ethnic group in China, and there are multiple ethnic groups in the country, the Han being the main ethnic group, but a lot of Western propaganda.
Where are the ethnic minorities now, Ben? Where are the ethnic minorities?
Yeah, has anyone forgot about about what happened to the Manchus?
No. The Manchus, clearly the Manchus never existed, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. They're just sort of.
They were always Chinese since the dawn of time.
And likes to portray China as this massive cultural monolith, as if all Chinese people are ethnically the same. There are multiple languages, many dialects. Some of these dialects.
Yeah, but most of them are being suppressed, so it is kind of a Han supremacist world. And if anything, that might make it worse, because at least in, like, Japan, there aren't really any minorities to oppress, so no one's being oppressed there, but China.
Dialects are totally mutually unintelligible, by the way. They're basically different languages. And then there are different ethnicities. So there are a variety of Muslim groups. The particular group that's gotten all this attention, the Uyghurs, this is a group where the U.S. has a long history, and not just the U.S., but Turkey specifically. These countries have a long history of supporting a separatist movement.
I'm going to need a citation on Turkey or the U.S. Because do they not know that Turkey straight up defended the internment?
Well, like, some Uyghurs have been given asylum there, and even that is too much for somebody like Ben.
Yeah.
Turkey used to 6 million years ago, but not anymore.
Yeah, like when they used to be called the Ottoman Empire.
A lot of violence in Xinjiang, which you're never allowed to discuss. There's been a lot of ethnic violence between the Uyghur, and it's not between every Uyghurs. Again, this is an artificial construction where we're supposed to believe that the Chinese government just hates Uyghurs for not being Han Chinese.
3 million in a concentration camp seems to suggest that. I mean, yeah, sure. Not all of them are in concentration camps, but that's. Also, I would like the number to be 0, to be honest. Like,
No, there's no moderate amount of concentration camps that's acceptable.
yeah, like, yeah, there was 0 is the only correct number of concentration camps you're allowed to run.
I mean, there is a problem with extremism in this community, as there is a problem with extremism in the white community in the U.S.
The white community?
The white, right.
The white community.
And also, you just talked about, like, Uyghurs. Like, there's a lot of violence in Xinjiang. It's like, gee, I wonder why.
Is there a white community? Like, is that like a term people use?
I don't know. Maybe Jared Taylor, but even then, it's like the whole white community. It's like, I don't. Again, I also don't think that, again, you're comparing, like, I don't know. Like, it's been my head's hurting. This is how he probably convinces you. He takes all he lowers your IQ point so you can get a point to where he is. We can take our 2 IQ points and then rub them together. Stop file.
Of neo-Nazis shooting people up. I mean, like, there are different problems, and it's a very real reality that there are Islamist extremists who have carried out massacres and terror attacks. And what's so funny is,
yeah, and there are also these ideological extremists too, who are taking these children from their families, putting them in camps, re-educating them. It's like, yeah, those extremists also seem pretty bad. They seem a lot worse. Seem like they could do a lot more damage.
Yeah, you make more extremists with those policies, not less.
seeing the U.S. government, the creator of the so-called war on terror, this country that has terrorized Muslims around the world and inside of its own borders for decades.
What? U.S. apparently does wars to terrorize Muslims. That's a new one.
Yeah, has he ever forgotten how the United States literally saved hundreds of thousands of Bosnian Muslims who were like literally being killed left and right by a Christian nation? Does he not forget that?
Or
He remembers it. He sees it as imperialism.
the 30 million Muslims in Afghanistan that are no longer living under the Taliban. But tens of millions of Afghans who don't live under the Taliban. And also, we can just look at how Muslims are treated in Russia. Not good. No, that country. They weren't treated well in the Soviet Union anyway. They had essentially death squads that were there to uphold the anti-religious values.
Yeah, and they had the deportations of the Tatars and the Chechens too.
It's killing millions of Muslims.
Yep.
Over 1 million just in Iraq alone.
I don't think that number's accurate. I think it was
Well, it might have been because of sectarian violence, but blaming the U.S. for every single one of those deaths on all sides.
Even accounting for sectarian violence, it totals up, like, all deaths considered, counting sectarian violence, deaths at the hands of America, and deaths at the hand of the regime, the Ba'ath regime of Iraq. It's just over 200,000, which is 1/5 of 1 million. Like, what the fuck? Where is he getting his numbers from?
I guess I guess Saddam Hussein is God.com.
I mean, even like those very popular meme infographics that float around the internet saying, like, showing all this bullshit, typically they only say like 500,000, but now here comes Ben Norton saying 1 million. Like, what the fuck?
Pretty
And
sure,
who knows? In a few years, it might become 5 million.
pretty sure it's going to be 1 billion deaths in Iraq.
7 billion people died in the Iraq War.
Yeah. That's almost as bad as the 300,000 people who died in Grenada meme that someone unironically said.
And then now suddenly the same people who have been carrying out these Islamophobic wars.
Wow. Yes, it was very Islamophobic when we aligned with those Muslims in Afghanistan to help take out the Taliban. Very Islamophobic war.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein wasn't Islamophobic when he oppressed the Shiite majority.
Oh wait, here's the real question: how is it that we can be both Islamophobic and also the biggest funders of Islamic terrorism?
Yeah, we're Islamophobic, yet we also help this Islamic resistance movement in Xinjiang, apparently.
Yeah,
Because Islamic extremists aren't real Muslims, I guess. And they're just imperialist tools.
Are now crying wolf about a specific Muslim group inside China.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hypocritical. And this isn't even to mention the fact that
I'm gonna find out where during the Iraq War, Iraqi children were basically put into camps and told that their religion was wrong. I mean, that might have happened under ISIS, but
of course the vast majority of Uyghur Muslims are normal Muslims, like the majority of Muslims in the world. There are over 1 billion Muslims. But it's also a fact that there are tens.
They're normal Muslims that want to practice their own religion in peace. And China is a state atheist country. It's not a secular country, Ben.
Yeah.
And it's a nationalist one, too, that sees the existence of any identities other than Chinese as a threat to its existence. So it feels the need to forcibly assimilate these people.
And
yes,
also,
Sinicization is like a thing that's existed for centuries. It's not like a new thing.
And also, it's like, Ben Norton, that's not a good, that's like saying, I'm not racist, but, it's like, obviously not all Muslims are extremists, but.
Yeah, anything after the but is irrelevant. Before the but is irrelevant.
Tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of extremist Uyghur Muslims, Salafi jihadists who have been fighting in Syria. And what's funny is the associated...
Hundreds of thousands?
I didn't know they were that big.
That's more than like all of ISIS, I'm pretty sure. That's like more than Hezbollah. That's more than...
Yeah, he's pretty loose with his numbers generally. Hundreds of thousands of them.
That's
Millions
more
of
than the
Iraqi
IRGC.
casualties.
That's almost as big as the Iranian military. Like, and
honestly, if
like,
they
what
would,
the fuck?
if they weren't there, they're probably there to help overthrow Assad. So that would be base. I don't know why. Why would I oppose that? Like, yeah, people have lived under tyranny, off to liberate people from tyranny. Seems base. Like, how is this supposed to make me not like them more?
Press did basically a press release for them talking about, like, endorsing them and saying that they have this valiant struggle, not mentioning that they're in alliance with Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
And there's a group in Syria called the Turkestan Islamic Party, which is a close ally of Al-Qaeda.
But hasn't killed as many people as Assad. Or the Russians, or the Iranians. Honestly, I think it's like the Turks, their entire civilian casualty rate was like 4. So they're not a significant group in the region.
In its early days, it was working with ISIS, but then there was a major split between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And the Turkestan Islamic Party is made up of Uyghur Muslims from China who want to create what they call East Turkestan. And what's so wild is you'll see so many media outlets and liberal activists and NGOs, they'll use that term East Turkestan, which is a separatist term used by Salafi jihadist extremists.
Well, I mean, hasn't it been called East Turkmenistan before then, though?
Not Turkmenistan.
Yeah,
Oh.
East Turkestan, and it's just a general nationalist term. There have been communist groups that have used that name.
Extremists who want to create a separate, they're secessionists who want to break off Xinjiang.
Yeah, again, why would I oppose separatists? In China, at least. You know, like, it's not like the CSA. It's not like these are the bunch of people who sit on the cotton field and only think of two things: the South and beating my wife.
Of China and create an Islamic state and rule it under, I mean, it's not going to exactly be the same as ISIS, but it's going to be like a Taliban style regime. So it's so hilarious. Speaking of the Taliban, the U.S. has also been bombing Uyghur extremist groups that have been fighting in Afghanistan in alliance with the Taliban.
Yeah.
So
yeah, again, like, what? Why is that bad for the Uyghurs? It's like some Uyghurs are extremists. Yeah, it's like also bombing Afghan extremists for helping Afghans. It's like this again, and also how does that justify what they're doing? Just because some of them were terrorists, it's like, you know how racist that is? It's like, you might as well just be saying, despite making up for only 13% of the population, they make up.
So while the U.S. is bombing Uyghur extremists in Afghanistan, and as Uyghur Al-Qaeda supporters in Syria are trying to create an Islamic State, the U.S. is supporting these same separatist groups in China. Why? Because it's
because they're being persecuted. Doy.
Because of the freaking concentration camps.
And also the fact they're not even the same group, they're just the same ethnicity, which, why would we punish people for being the same ethnicity as terrorists?
Are they necessarily even supporting separatism? Like, is that even true?
I don't think
like
so.
The Turkestan Islamic Party is the only major separatist faction, and the U.S. is not like supporting that in any significant way whatsoever.
It's the same goal that all empires have tried. The British Empire did this.
So
many European
supporting separatism means denouncing human rights abuses, then yes, the U.S. is supporting separatism.
empires, it's balkanization. It's carving up China, divide and conquer. They want to carve off Tibet. That's been one of their goals since the triumph of the Chinese Revolution in 1949. Immediately in the 1950s, the CIA began activating a lot of assets, including the
CIA. Because the Chinese were the ones who invaded Tibet before us in 1950. It was a separate country before then.
Also, funny thing is, in 1950, when the Tibetan insurgency started, the CIA was just a baby was in its infancy.
Yeah, and most of our operations there failed anyway.
Like
Dalai Lama, who has been on CIA payroll for decades.
Yeah,
the CIA was funding.
That's a new one. That's a new one. I have never heard the Dalai Lama being on the CIA payroll.
Apparently, he once had vague connections in the 60s and 70s.
Funding Tibetan separatists with millions of dollars for decades.
Millions? Like, I think they could do a lot better with millions than. I don't think they have millions of dollars just spending around. Like, make sure you give that to the. It's like, again, the CIA. They fish apparently. It's like, yeah, they don't have like $70 billion, yet they give out like $200 billion in war support somehow. Very effective organization.
And then now it's the same thing in Xinjiang. The goal is separatism. The goal is to carve up China, have China with internal problems within its borders so it can't focus on issues outside of its borders, and then eventually just carve it up. And you'll see maps that people are sharing on Twitter, and they say that the real China is this little slice here, and we're going to carve up these maps.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
Yes, little Reddit fantasy maps are clearly the basis of U.S. policy. Yeah, but that's clearly what it is.
The Hotline for China start date. That's what Ben thinks American foreign policy wants.
Carve up the map and make these new regions of China. I mean, it's really brazen. It's neocolonialism.
Yeah.
But none of them are new regions. A lot of them are regions that already exist.
Yeah, we're their own countries for many years.
Like,
And it's kind of funny because a lot of people don't understand the roots of the Uyghurs too, as well. Dating.
also, I don't think colonialism ever advocated for separatism from an empire. Like, that's not usually how they did. Like, they usually conquered land for themselves. They didn't really been separatist. But I don't expect to know shit about colonialism.
Back to Operation Mongoose, where these Uyghurs were the actual Uyghurs that took the Stinger missiles into Afghanistan to aid the Mujahideen, and that.
Well, China was aiding the Mujahideen.
Everybody forgets that. They actually at one point were giving more aid than us. And that was cool of them. That was something they did right.
Yeah. Now, the big mistake, I think that's the biggest mistake with America's funding of the Mujahideen was that the big thing is that we had to do it through Pakistan, which Pakistan was the one that really fucked it up because they were the ones who just funded Pashtun nationalists.
Yeah, no, who weren't as effective on the battlefield.
It's like if we could have just done it directly ourselves, then it would have been probably a lot better off.
Oh yeah.
That form of radicalism also has roots back to the CIA, which people don't even talk about.
The CIA put the Muslims in China in the year 700. We're gonna need a source on that.
Well, we're long past the point where this guy has sources for any of his stuff.
No, it's a crack pipe. That's the source.
Yeah, the bong. That's what it is.
And also another fact that a lot of these Uyghurs that are going to these, whatever you call re-education camps, a lot of their leaders want them to do that because they want them to learn the language so they can plug in economically.
You mean the puppet leaders installed by the CCP? Yeah, no shit.
Surprise, surprise.
And also, the leaders want them to do that, but they don't want to do that. So there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there. A little bit. Probably not a good argument. That'd be like saying, oh no, but you don't get it, you see. The leaders of the Jewish community are supporting what they're doing in Germany, so it's all cool.
To Beijing and make that money and fund a lot of their people. And a lot of people don't understand the roots and what's actually going on there. But let's talk about it.
Also, why are they showing Operation Mongoose, a Cuban operation, to describe Uyghurs?
I don't know. It's the CIA, bro. Everything they do is basically one evil amalgamation.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think the Uyghurs are in Cuba. If they're in Cuba, they must be very lost.
Another hot pocket because that Xinjiang, they want to carve that up, put that aside. Hong Kong, baby. They've been messing around there for a while, but finally.
They've been messing around there for a while?
So when Hong Kongers protest for democracy, it's the U.S. messing around.
And you know, when 2 million people show up to a protest, somehow the CIA has that much money on them.
Yeah, and not only that, they managed to rig the local elections that same year in a massive landslide in favor of the Democratic candidates. And also, every single popular vote election has been won by the Democrats there. Yeah, clearly that's all the CIA.
Yeah.
They just arrested Jimmy Lai. I mean, this guy could have been arrested a long time ago.
Yeah.
Tell the people who this man Jimmy Lai is and why Americans should care. And more importantly, what's going to happen with Hong Kong moving forward? Now that kind of the West is like moving out of there, they're arresting some of the people who are tied to these NGOs. What's it going to be like in Hong Kong moving forward?
Well, obviously Jimmy Lai is a freedom fighter. Clearly,
Ah.
I mean, everyone told me
Yes,
he's a freedom fighter,
unironically,
loves
he
democracy.
is.
Who's Jimmy Lai? I actually don't know.
A Hong Kong businessman and big supporter of the protest. He's like a rags to riches dude who escaped from mainland China after the communist revolution with just $1 in his pocket. And in Hong Kong, he built a whole media empire. So, yeah, he's the kind of guy these people hate.
Yeah, successful guy who hates communism. That's practically the entire.
Yep, that's you got all the everything they hate there.
Jimmy Lai is like the Jeff Bezos of Hong Kong, but honestly, even worse. He is.
What? He's bad because he has money.
Yeah, he's bad because he has money and he supports democracy, which in these people's view is both unforgivable.
Economy, but this is very important. China does not have a neoliberal economic model.
What? It kind of does.
Yeah, they're a pillar of neoliberalism.
It's neoliberal economics. It's just the other stuff isn't neoliberal. The other stuff, now that's true communism right there.
Like was imposed on the rest of the world after the destruction of the Eastern Bloc.
Imposed?
They overthrew their governments. They wanted it.
Yeah.
When there was an attempt at a counter-revolution, an attempt to overthrow the Communist Party of China and implementing a neoliberal model, which also would have likely.
He's talking about Tiananmen Square, in case you don't know.
Oh, yeah. He's going to. Never happened. I don't know what he's talking about.
Never happened and was justified. Schrodinger's Tiananmen Square.
The carving up and balkanization of China. And that's referred to as the Tiananmen movement, right?
Balkanized? Like, what does he think we were trying to go for? It's like, what? 50,000 China's one 50,000 state, one China solution or something? You've heard of 2 states, 1 China. Now it's time for 80,000 states, 1 China.
Like every single village is its own country.
Yeah, like those villages, it's like, you probably still have like, what, 10 million people in them.
So there was this movement where pretty explicitly there were Western-backed elements that wanted to overthrow the Communist Party of China and do what they did to Russia, to the Soviet Union and then Russia. They imposed what was referred to at the time as shock therapy, mass neoliberal shock therapy, privatizing.
That was mostly because no one knew what they were doing because they didn't know how to handle a economy.
Yeah, no, and their economy was just utterly in the dumps, and nothing they had was viable. And in the honor, the social trust needed to build such an economy was non-existent. And that combined with terrible management is what led to a lot of pain post-collapse. And like Russia was only one example. Countries like the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland did very good after the collapse of communism, after an initial painful period, of course.
Everything that led to these large oligarchs, and they wanted to do that to China. They were never successful because the Communist Party of China remained in control.
That's not a good thing, Ben. That's not a good thing.
Euphemism. It remained in control. How did it remain in control, Ben? Please tell us.
Yeah. How did it control, Ben? How did it stay in control, Ben?
but there are internal conflicts that go on. There's a lot of political debates that go on within the Communist Party of China, and there was the right wing of the party that were the more pro a kind of developmental model that still maintains state control but uses elements of privatization and a mixed economy, which were the kind of Deng Xiaoping elements.
Ooh, they sound scary. Right wing. Scary right wingers right there. Feel them. They're going to. They might.
They're gonna force you to be neoliberalism or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a fight going on. Xi Jinping, the current president, comes. What's funny is the New York Times they always have these like Cold War zombies, these vampires who will never die, who are like 800 years old.
Oh yeah, Kissinger. He's going to be alive for hundreds of years.
And who like were friends with Dulles and the founders of the CIA, and they'll write these op-eds in the New York Times about what they call the red bureaucracy and the red guard and the old guard and the Chinese Communist Party. And so she comes out of a particular wing of the party that is more on the left of the party. And
boo, leftists. Cringe leftists. That's what basically happened.
Cringe leftists came in and screwed everything up.
Yeah. History of the internet and history of China in a nutshell.
So anyway, the point is that there's a conflict going on, and the Chinese government still has
Actually, we can continue for a few minutes, but then I kind of have to end the stream because it's getting late, so we may have to do a part 2. If that's all good with you guys.
All good. I can do it another night.
The Communist Party is very large. It's like 10% of the population. So there's a lot of divisions going on. But the point is that they never had mass neoliberal privatization in that same way. In terms of the GDP of the Chinese economy, the commanding heights, which it's a term that used to be used more in economics, which refer to like the banks, the most important thing. The banks are not privatized. The banks are still under the control of the state. Large infrastructure, the main infrastructure companies that are building the roads, the railways are under the control of the state.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, the banks are fucking under the control of the state. That explains the whole shit with Ant Financial. If any of you have kept up with that.
You like, they maybe keep calling you.
What was that?
Many other parts of infrastructure, electricity, things like that, health, etc. So the large parts of the most important parts of the economy remain under state control. And then there are other parts that are kind of guided by the state in this kind of mixed model. And there's a fight going on. And I think that there are definitely a lot of people in China who have complaints with some of the privatization because it has led to a mass growth of the economy, but it's also led to inequality. So now that what's happening is that there's a fight going on with the Communist Party of China because the
inequality, like, you know, there's 300 million people in poverty when previously there was like 1 billion people in poverty. You're right. It's like less equal.
Yeah.
You know, Ben Norton's got a point.
Yeah.
There's more inequality.
Deng Xiaoping, who came into power after the death of Mao Zedong in 1978. Mao died in 76, and 78, Deng comes in. And there's a fight going on ideologically, and the argument made by his faction is that we are a very poor country, which is true, and that we're still a largely feudal country with most people in the countryside, large parts of the country not developed. So in order to bring
like
about
30
socialism,
years of Maoist revolution didn't do very much.
Anyway, I'm just going to look. Yeah, I'll stop in like 4 minutes because that's halfway point. So 4 minutes.
we have to develop the productive forces of our economy, which means that we have to go through a period of capitalist development in order to eventually move to the road of socialism. That's a more traditional Marxist understanding, going back to Marx himself. So essentially, that was the argument made by the Communist Party of China, and they've gotten to the point where they have the second largest, or probably, I mean, it's probably the largest economy on earth. So now there are elements of the Communist Party of China saying that we need to move back toward a more socialist model, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think she clearly falls on that side of the split. But the point is, again, just to stress this point, is that that for the U.S. and these Western capitalist countries, China is still not capitalist enough. It's still a mixed economy with large state control.
No, it's not. It's not human rights enough. That's my problem with China.
I feel like people like Ben Norton always boil down like the West's complaints with China to this. Oh, they're just jealous of China and its system being so good. Just like, no. Nobody's like, it's not good. It really isn't.
Want it to be a total capitalist neoliberal country, and they want to divide it up like they did to Russia. And
which one is it, Ben? Do they want to make it a neoliberal hellscape, or do they want to divide it up?
That's why what's so funny is if you listen to Pompeo and all these people, they're like China is Marxist-Leninist and China is communist, because the government still maintains that ideological framework, and there's a very real possibility that they actually will go back toward more of those socialist policies. So the idea that China is, it's so funny hearing these people say that like China is more capitalist than the West. I mean, that's absolutely insane, because the West, first of all, most Western economies are based on a financial economy. It's imaginary, fictitious capital. They're not productive economies.
What?
Jinx. But seriously, this is like Hobbes 2.0 when he was like, you have no substantive economy.
Oh, substantive base.
Honestly, yeah. At least Hobbes is more entertaining than this guy, so I guess congratulations, Ben Norton. You are now lower than Hobbes on the list of people I respect.
The Chinese economy is based on production. China produces goods for the entire world. I mean, I live in Nicaragua. There are a lot of goods here in Nicaragua.
Stay there. Don't go. But just poor Nicaraguans have to like see you in the supermarket all the time. Just kidding. Regular Nicaraguans don't get food.
Oh, yeah, and just like, if they ever protest against the government again, they have to deal with this guy spreading misinfo about them.
Nicaragua, which is a poor country in Central America. There are so many goods here.
There's a reason why it's poor.
That are made in China. So China is a massive powerhouse in terms of production. So in terms of the commanding heights of the economy, like especially the financial sector, that's still under state control. So there's so many misconceptions, but I would highly recommend, I think someone who really understands the kind of the economics behind that. I mean, there are a lot of people and there's some interesting, I mean, there's a lot of, especially stuff in India. There are these economists called the Patnaiks who are.
Don't listen to them. Do not listen to people called the Patnaiks. Like literally.
The Pot Knights?
I don't know. It's some Indian thing. It's like, maybe I should ask Tanky Collective about them. Maybe he knows about them. And maybe he can explain how they're so stupid. Well, they have stupid names like Pot Knights.
Really good. But in terms of US, very like a simplistic kind of getting an understanding of the Chinese strategy, I would recommend Richard Wolff.
Honestly, I'd rather listen to the Pot Knights.
Yes, he manages to bring up somebody more reliable. If I didn't know that was possible.
Richard Wolff has the Economic Update, a regular show on YouTube and a podcast, and he really can, in simplistic terms.
He has a podcast, so he's experienced.
Yeah, I bet he also has a Patreon too.
Yeah, subscribe to his
Can
Patreon.
kind of explain the Chinese model and why it's not like this. What's so funny is all these Western propagandists are like, they want to demonize China as some evil communist dictatorship, while at the same time,
It is.
trying to take credit, saying, well, the only reason it lifted 800 million people out of poverty is because of capitalism.
That's also true. It's like, and even then though, that's not entirely true because their GDP per capita is still like on the same level as the Dominican Republic. Like, that's the thing. The GDP, physical GDP is very high, but when you actually like account for the population,
they're still pretty poor.
Yeah.
Right. But meanwhile, here in Latin America, most of the countries are capitalist, and they've been capitalist for decades. And not only are they not lifting.
Which one? Most of them have like authoritarian governments that don't really, in terms of like capitalism, they really don't defend things like property rights, which is like one of the key aspects of capitalism to work. It's like, also again though, the most prosperous country in the region, Chile, versus the least prosperous country in the world, Venezuela.
People out of poverty, they're actually, poverty is rising. So if
in Venezuela, yeah. Nicaragua, yeah. Cuba, yeah.
Capitalism lifted 800 million Chinese out of poverty, why isn't capitalism lifting hundreds of millions of Indians out of poverty?
Because it has.
Like literally, there's studies that show how many Indians are being lifted out of poverty.
Yeah, India's alongside China is like the other big success story for a country that adopted free markets and outside investment and saw hundreds of millions lifted out of poverty.
The reason why it was so poor for a long time was because it was essentially under the socialistic government.
Yeah, it was like this weird bureaucracy, the license Raj, it was called.
Because India is still suffering from extreme poverty.
Yeah. And I think that when you said that when you talk about the buzzwords, it
wasn't until like Modi actually became prime minister where they actually did any real liberal reforms. So,
well, no, they've been doing those since 1991.
Well, yeah, but Modi like really pushed.
Well, I mean, let's look at he tries to pretend that there's not bad poverty in China. Did you not hear of the people who used to live in certain areas of Shanghai and literally, or Beijing, and literally were just told, hey, time to go, because other businesses wanted to go into those areas, and other people, there is extreme poverty in China. It's just hidden. It's not out there because the CCP wants to promote an image that everything is fine, and that everything is glorious. Look, in every nation, there are people, unfortunately, who are at the bottom of the economic spectrum, and there are homeless, and that is sad and disappointing. We don't want to see that. But when we look at China and India and compare the two, yes, India has seen a lot of people lifted out of endemic poverty. Let's not forget that at one point in time in India, there was an entire class of people, the untouchables, who were literally essentially the classless and were essentially the lowest and the poorest of the poor who were forced to stay in that caste. And now that those laws that kept those people there are now gone. There's a lot of there's economic mobility now. I'm not saying India is perfect, no, because there is poverty there, but there is economic mobility in India, and more importantly, there's journalistic and political freedom in India compared to the CCP. In India, where you can actually elect your representatives, in China, they're selected for you.
Anyway, I think on that note, that this would actually be a good place to like be cut off, and we can be back for round 2 because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. All I can say is that this picture probably needs more people now. It's like,
The more to protect you from the commies, the better.
yeah. So anyway, if anyone wants to make any final remarks, they can. Otherwise, I'll end the stream here. Take the silence as a no.
It's unanimous.
Right?
All right, see
Thank
you
you,
next
Hope.
week.